Hello and welcome to part 2 of the platform game tutorial. In this video, we'll program our sprite to jump, interact with a platform, and detect a collision with another sprite. Let's begin. Go ahead and load up the game from the last video. So if you have an account, go into My Stuff and click on the game. This may take a second to load. Now you'll be greeted with this play screen. We don't need this. We're going to go into the C inside to get to the code. If you don't have an account, go ahead and click File, and then click Load from your computer to load this file that you saved from last time. Now you may be greeted with this cluttered screen. We're going to clean that up. Go ahead and right click and click Clean Up Blocks. Excellent. Now to begin programming, we're going to have to make a variable. And this variable is going to be y velocity. Just like in the last video, we made one for x velocity, and remember x is across left and right of the screen, and y is up and down on the screen. So we need to make one for the y, and we're going to name this one y velocity. So let's head over to variables, click make a variable, and we're going to name this one y velocity. And we're going to make it for this sprite only, because only the llama will be using it. Alright, now we're going to take set to block, we're going to drag this out, and we're going to select the option y velocity. Now we're going to keep the value to 0. We're only going to store 0 in there for right now, because to make our llama jump up in the air or accelerate up into the air, we're going to be changing this value with a loop. So we're just going to keep that at 0 right now. So let's go ahead and move that block and place it under x velocity, which is in the when clicked blocked area. Alright, now we need one more variable, and this one we're going to name jump height. Now the reason why we're naming it jump height is this is going to contain the value that's going to tell a loop to go around for a certain amount of times. And each time that loop goes around, it's going to make our llama climb into the air. So let's go ahead and make the variable jump height. And I'm going to set this one also for this sprite only, so only the llama is going to use it. Click OK. We're going to do the same thing we did for y velocity, except we're going to set the value to 7. We're going to test 7 out for right now. We're going to have the loop go around 7 times. And we're going to place that under y velocity. Okay, now that we have two new variables to play with, let's make a function that will cause our llama to jump up in the air and come back down when we press the spacebar. To do that, let's go to My Blocks, and we're going to click Make a Block. And I'm going to name this one Space Jump, because I'm pressing the spacebar to cause the llama to jump. And we're going to make sure Run Without Screen Refresh is not selected. I'm going to click OK. Alright, now to make our llama jump in the air, what we need to do is make a loop that will increment the y velocity and then change the y position of the llama up in the air and then have it come back down. So to do that, we need a loop, and I'm going to go into Control, and I'm going to use the repeat loop. Now this repeat loop will repeat the code inside it for the value that is in here. So right now, it'll repeat whatever's inside it 10 times. Now we want to repeat that according to the jump height. So I'm going to go into Variables, and I'm going to grab the jump height variable and place it inside the repeat block. Now whatever's in the jump height variable, which is 7, that's how many times this loop will repeat. And I'm going to attach that to define space jump. Now that we have that, we need to increment the y velocity and then change the y position of the llama based on the y velocity. Now to do that, what we're going to do is grab change by block, and we're going to put that inside the loop, and we're going to select the y velocity. And we're going to set the value that's going to change by to 10. Let's try 10. Alright, now we need to change the y position of our llama. So we're going to go into Motion, and we're going to grab change y by, and we're going to go back to Variables, and we're going to select y velocity. And there we go. So let's test that out. Let's see if our llama will jump into the air when we press the space bar. And before we try that, we need to add some more code here. So we could add an if-then block down here. But what will happen is, if we're holding down the right arrow, it'll never get there. And the reason for this, remember, is that code reads top to bottom, left to right. And the first thing this code's going to notice and check when it reaches the forever loop is if we're holding down an arrow key. And if we are holding down an arrow key, it'll stay inside one of these arrow key blocks and never reach the jump block. And then same if we put the jump block on top, we'll never reach the arrow keys. Now in a game, we need to hold down the arrow keys and jump forward or backwards. So to remedy this, what we're going to do is make another when clicked block and set code under it. And what will happen is that code will run simultaneously with this when clicked block. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's head over to events, and we're going to click when clicked and drag it out. Then we're going to go to the loops and grab a forever loop because we want this to run forever until we click the stop button up here in the corner. And then we're going to grab an if then block, and then we need to sense to see if the key is pressed. So we're going to go to sensing, and remember we're going to use the space bar as the key. So we're going to go key space press, and it's already selected for you. If it's not, just make sure you've selected the space bar option. And then we're going to go back to my blocks and get the space jump block and place it in there. Here, let's clean this up a bit. There we go. Now let's see what happens. I'm going to start the game, and if I move over here and press the space bar, woof, it jumps all the way up here. It's pretty cool. Now we can hide these. Let's hide those. Go to variables and unselect them. That llama jumped pretty high. Now what we're going to do next is make some code to make it drop back down. So to get our llama to drop back to the ground and simulate gravity, what we're going to need to do is make another loop. And now we're going to use a different kind of loop. We are going to use the repeat until loop. Now how this loop works is it loops around until the statement in its input is true. Sort of like the if then block, where it will activate its code if the input is true using one of these sense blocks. So let's go into loops and find the repeat until block. There it is. Go ahead and drag that out. Now don't attach it to anything just yet. So again, it'll repeat this loop until the statement in here is true. So what do we want to put in there for a statement? Well, we want our llama to drop down to the sprite here, back to the ground, right around this green area. So let's use color sensing as our input. So we're going to go into sensing, and we're going to grab touching color. Now this color we're going to choose has to be exact to this green. Even if it's 1 point of saturation over, see saturation, it will be considered a different color to the computer. So to get the exact color, we're going to use the copy tool. We're going to move it right in the middle of the green there. There we go. And there we go, the exact green. Okay, now what we'll need to do is change the y velocity by a certain number. So we're going to go back to variables, and we're going to get the change by block. I'm going to put that in the loop, and we're going to select y velocity. Let's try -5. Next, we're going to want to set the y by this velocity here. So we're going to go into motion, and we're going to grab set y2. And it looks like we actually need to put this block in the original repeat loop. So let's go ahead and grab that and remove that and grab a set y2. And now we need to set that y to the value of y velocity in both loops here. So we're going to go back to variables and grab y velocity. And I'm going to put that inside each of the inputs. Now that's why our llama rocketed up the screen so fast, is because we are using the change by y, which made it go all the way to the top of the screen. If we do set y2, you'll get this really cool effect. It'll pause the llama, making it look like it's accelerating and deaccelerating as it jumps. Alright, now let's connect them together and see what happens. So I'm going to click the green flag here, and now let's see if it jumps. Look at that. There we go. That's a really nice jump. Now let's move left and right. Now you notice if I'm moving and I hit jump, it jumps, but the acceleration from it walking or running here does not continue in the jump. It just jumps straight up and down. Now we are going to fix that next. Okay, if we want to carry acceleration into our jumps from the llama running and then jumping, what we need to do is create two if-then blocks. One to sense if the right arrow key is pressed, and one to sense if the left arrow key is pressed. And then move the llama on the x-coordinate by either positive 10 or negative 10. Remember, if we're going on the x-coordinate towards the positive, we're going right, and if we're going the x-coordinate towards the negative, we're going to the left. So let's do that. Head on over to Control and grab an if-then block. Now don't attach this one to anything yet. Grab a second and attach it to the first if-then block. Now we need to sense the arrow keys, so we're going to go into Sensing. We're going to grab the key press block, one for right, Oops, one for right, and then one for left. Now we need to change the x coordinate by either a positive 10 or a negative 10. So we're going to go into motion, and we're going to grab change x by. We'll keep the positive 10 for the right, and then we're going to drag out a second one and change it to negative 10 for the left, so that way it goes left. Alright, now we're going to take these two blocks and place them up here in the first repeat block. Now the reason for this, because in real life when we run and jump, we accelerate in one direction and then land. We can't change direction midair and go the other way. But if you want to give your llama that power, you could duplicate this and put one in the repeat block and one in the repeat until block. But we're only going to do one here. So I'm going to put that one on top. Now what this should simulate is the llama running and then jumping and accelerating across the screen in the air and then deaccelerating back down to the ground. Let's see if that works. Let's go ahead and I'm going to click the green flag to go. Let's see, I'm running. Ooh, I jumped really high. And then back to normal jumps. Now the reason for that large jump is because we have the y velocity at the beginning of the code set to 0, which means it's going to start at the 0 position and then jump up, depending on what's in the space jump. So to remedy that, we're going to go down into motion and grab the x, or the y, not the x, the y position variable, which is storing the y position of negative 130, and we're going to place that in y velocity. Now if we restart the code, we'll notice that it does normal jumps. Nice, that's very smooth. Alright, now that we have our llama moving left and right and jumping, let's add a platform for it to interact with. Now before we go into the sprite maker, let's head on down in the space jump function, and we're going to grab the exact color here because we want the top of our platform to be the exact green as the ground. So on a piece of scrap paper or note card, write down color 37, saturation 60, and brightness 100. Now we're using a color sensing. Later on in another video, we'll show you a specific math equation you can use to detect collision and platforms. But for right now, we're just going to use color sensing. So let's head on over to choose a sprite and then click paint. Now what we're going to want to do is select the rectangle tool, and we're going to want to draw a rectangle that's no taller than the centering crosshair, and it can be slightly longer than the llama. So we're going to make sure it's 37 for color, 60 for saturation, and 100 for brightness. Looks good. Alright, so let's go ahead and draw that rectangle. I'm going to start over here and draw it to about there. I'm going to shorten it up just a little bit. Don't want it too long. And that might be a bit tall. Right there. Perfect. Now we're going to center that. There we go. Next, we want the outline to be the same color. So we're going to use the copy tool. And we're going to copy 37, 60, 100. Looks good. Now we're going to copy the platform we just made, and we're going to add a ground effect. This will also help in color sensing. So hold down the key Control and press C, then hold down the key Control again and press V, and that'll paste it. Now we're going to want to change this color to brown, and this is going to be its own brown. It doesn't have to be the same brown as this. So we're going to go to Fill, we're going to go down towards the orange, and we're going to turn it brown. That looks like a good dirt color. And then we're going to want to do the outline and make it the same brown. There we go. Next, we're going to center this as best we can, leaving about 50% of the green block showing still. And then we're going to make the brown one slightly longer. This will also help us with our sensing later on. That looks good. Now we're going to hold down the Control button, and we're going to click the green. We're going to hold down the Shift button and click the green. Now both are selected. Now we're going to group this together. So now let's turn that into one object. So each time I select it, I can move it around. Now I'm going to move this block down just above the llama's head here. Now let's see what the llama does when it touches that block. Actually, let's shrink this down just a bit. It looks a bit large. And grab this handle here and just shrink it down to about there, about half its size. Now that looks like a good platform. And let's recenter that. Alright, head on over to the llama sprite and then click Code. And let's see what happens. So I'm walking, and it doesn't detect it. But what if I jump? Let's see. It lands right on the platform, and that's because of this here, the repeat until touching color. But if I walk off the platform, I'm just going to hover in place. So what we need to do is create a gravity function to have us fall back to the ground when we're touching the dirt of the platform or when we're walking off a platform. So the way this function is going to work, we are going to use an if-then block. That's going to detect if we're touching the brown or if we're not touching the green. And then it's going to use this code here to drop it back down to the ground. So let's head over to My Blocks, go to Make a Block, name it Gravity, and I'm going to run this without screen refresh to get a nice smooth gravity effect. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Let's drag this down here so we can see it better. Now we're going to go into Control and grab an if-then block. Now we need to use the operator OR and NOT. So we're going to go to Operators, and we're going to select an OR and click on a NOT. Now we need to sense the colors. So we're going to do 2 touching color blocks. I'll just duplicate the other one. Oops, duplicate, add a comment. Alright, now this one's going to be the green. Click that, go to the green. I'm going to click this one, and we're going to go to the brown. And then we're going to put the brown on the left of the OR. And we're going to put the green in the NOT, and then take those 2 blocks and put it on the other side of the OR. Now you notice if I click this, it'll say true, and that's because I'm not touching the green. Now if I was moving it over here to touch the brown, we can also see it's true because it's touching the brown. Now it only needs to have one of these to be true for it to work. If you wanted both of them to be true, you'd use an AND instead of an OR operator. So let's put that in the if statement. Now we only need this bit of code here. So we're just going to duplicate the change and the set and place that inside. Now we're going to push this down somewhere so we can see it. And what we're going to do is put gravity on the top of this when clicked. So right on top of the if in between the forever loop. So go into My Blocks, grab gravity, and place that right there. Now you notice it fell right to the ground. Let's see if this works. So if I jump on the stage and I walk off, I should fall down. Nice. Now if I touch the brown, you'll see I fall too. So that means when we make this game, we need to make these platforms always above the llama's head. So we put that there. So that way it can walk underneath it. Now watch, it will have the double jump feature. Because what happens is when it touches that green, it resets jump and then allows us to jump again. Pretty cool, right? Alright, so before I end this video, let's add one more part to the game, and that is the obstacle sprite. Alright, let's add the obstacle sprite. Head on down to choose a sprite. Now I'm going to select a robot, because the robot is guarding the second donut, and I want one with a good animation of motion. So if we hover over, we can see the different animations. That one's pretty cool. Let's check out this one. Yeah, we're going to do this one. Good animation sequence here. Let's shrink that, because that's quite a large obstacle. And we're going to drag it down here, because we want to test it. Alright, so what this sprite's going to do is it's going to be animated, and it's going to sense to see if the llama's touching it. If the llama is touching it, it's going to say something like gotcha. So let's start. So every time we have a new sprite, we need to start the code with a when clicked. And then of course the forever loop, because we want to run forever until I hit the stop button over here. Now we need to animate this. So let's head over to looks. And we're just going to use next costume. And then we're going to go to control again and do wait. And we're going to do wait 0.2 seconds like the llama. That should give it a nice rhythm. And then we're going to use an if-then block to sense the llama. Go to sensing. We're going to use the sense or the touching block here. Let's see. Touching. There it is. And we're going to say touching llama. So when it's touching a llama, we want to say something. So we're going to go to looks. We're going to do the say for seconds block. We're going to click that. We're going to add that right here. And we're going to switch this to gotcha. Oh, there we go. Gotcha. Now let's see how that works. We hit the green flag here. Look at that, and it's animated. And our llama can move around the screen. So let's see what happens when I touch the robot. Yep, it says gotcha for 2 seconds. Nice. And it'll pause there. Excellent. All right. So now what we want to do is, because the llama is touching it, we want to restart at the beginning of the game, which shouldn't be too hard. So what we're going to do is make another function in the llama sprite. And we're going to name this function collision. So go into my blocks, click make a block, and name it collision. And we're going to run without screen refresh, of course. Click OK. Let's move this out here. Now what we want this to do is, if the llama is touching the robot, to go back to the center. So all we need is an if-then block. So we're going to go into control, grab an if-then block, and attach it to the collision function. Sense to see if we're touching the robot with a touching block, and set that to robot. And then all we need to do is duplicate this code from here to here. Let's do that. I'm going to duplicate, move this over here, get rid of this forever block, and we're going to stick that in here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to run collision forever. So see how we have a one clicked for the left and right arrow keys on the space bar? We are going to do that for the robot. So let's find an empty space, go into events, go to when clicked, go down to control, grab a forever, and then place your variable in it. Or not your variable, excuse me, your function in there. Grab collision, and we're going to put that in the forever loop. Now let's try that out. So if I touch the robot, I should head right back to the start. Look at that, that was awesome. Alright, again, as always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.